All right, everybody. Thanks for being out here tonight. My name is Jason Heffley, and I'm the Illinois State Director for Americans for Prosperity. And we are honored to have our leadership from Concerned Veterans for America here with us tonight, along with Chairman Bost, for this great town hall. Before we get started, I want to thank Commander Seth Miller and the VFW Post 4183 for hosting us tonight. And Larry and Kevlar's Grill for feeding us when this is over. So, at this time, I'd like Commander Miller to stand up and lead us in the pledge.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Be seated.
Now I'll introduce our distinguished guests and get off the stage for the important people. First, he's rushing me off. He's like, get off. I mean, no one wants to hear Jason. First, I'd like to introduce the man in the middle, Russ Duerstein. He's the Executive Director of Concerned Veterans for America. Russ served in the Air Force from 1982 to 1988. And his family comes from a long line of service. His son, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather served this country from the Civil War to the Afghan and Iraqi wars. He's been with CVA for almost 10 years fighting for better benefits for veterans. Thank you, Russ. He'll be moderating tonight. The man on the end, Jason Beardsley, Senior Coalition Advisor for Concerned Veterans of America. He's a veteran of the Army and the U.S. Navy. He spent 22 years of service, including 15 years as Army Special Operations and Joint Special Operations. After leaving the military, he served as Special Assistant in the Office of Secretary of Defense and Senior Advisor, Deputy Veteran Affairs. He also served as the National Executive Director for Association of U.S. Navy. He was awarded 2 Bronze Stars during his service. Thank you, Jason. And the man we're all here to see tonight, Congressman Bost, has represented the 12th District since 2015, served in the Marine Corps from 1979 to 1982. He also served his community as a local firefighter and a job creator. And now he serves as the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. With that, I thank you all for being here, and I turn it over to you.
I just want to say thank you, and I want to thank the Concerned Veterans of America. Look, coming out and meeting with our constituents and having this town hall and having an opening so that we can talk about these vitally important issues. But first off, let me say this. I am humbled to be here. First off, I'm humbled to represent the Illinois 12th, which is amazing that this truck driver's son did that. But somehow that my colleagues elected me first as ranking member and now as chairman of the VA committee as a Marine Corps corporal that was in during peacetime. I never thought I'd be serving at this capacity, but it's service that I'm so proud that I can do for you, okay? These conversations are what we can work on and listen to and take back to adjust any issues that you might have. Now, let me tell you also that if you have certain issues that are personal, we can deal with those through our office and try to help that way. But this is a larger perspective that we're talking about the overall veteran situation and what we can do to make it better. For those of you that don't know, I'm not slightly military, even though I served 3 years in the Marine Corps. My dad and 2 uncles on my dad's side were Army during Korea. My grandfather that I never knew, who died just after my mom and dad were married in a car wreck, he was Navy in the Second World War. The grandfather that I knew as a grandfather was a Marine. That's why I then went into the Marine Corps. And then his son was a Vietnam Marine that was a victim of the ultimate oxymoron, friendly fire, and actually had about 100% disability, but has been very successful in life because of what the VA has helped him with. My son, Stephen, is now, though he's a sitting judge, he is also a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, and his mother did a great job of raising him in spite of me. And calling him sir was tough, but calling him your honor is tougher. And then my grandson, Spencer, who is actually not my son's son, but my daughter's son, is a corporal picking up sergeant and is an F-18 mechanic in Miramar, California. So as you can see, all this is very personal to me. We want to make sure that our services that we provide to our veterans are provided at the level that they need to be provided and that we're promised. And I think we hear a lot about that in the panel, and then we're going to have it open to discussion. So let's just get it started. Do I want to bring this mic down? Okay. See, it's not my first rodeo.
Well, Chairman, I just really appreciate that. My first question really kind of touches on what you started into a little bit. How would you say your own history of service in the United States Marine Corps has impacted your ability to serve on this committee that you chair? I know you've been ranking member, you've been chairman. Tell us a little bit about how important that experience is in Congress.
Well, first off, let me tell you that. So you have the chairman and ranking member in the House and chairman and ranking member in the Senate. That's called the four corners. And of the four corners, I'm the only veteran. That is kind of strange, I thought, but tell you what, most veterans, I just want to let you know, they want to serve on HASC. They don't want to serve on VA committee because that way they're still putting bullets downrange. But so you know this, because of this is so wild that I have to explain this quite often to my colleagues that are not veterans. And this is where it helps. You and I all know as veterans that, yes, we're all veterans, but different veterans served in different capacity. That doesn't make them less of a veteran, but we kind of have a structure. If you're a reservist, you didn't see active duty. In my case, I was a peacetime veteran. Active duty. Not decorated, that's a different level. Didn't see active duty, that's a different level. Not disabled, that's a different level. Each one of those have unique circumstances, and the situation is different and needs to be dealt with. And when we work on legislation, we need to know who we're dealing with and what we can do to provide them with the promises that were made to them. I know and understand that because of that. I also know quite often the hurts the family feels, the pain, the pain when you ever sent a child of yours into a combat situation and how rough it is when you watch them walk out the door or walk through the TSA line. And because of that, it gives you a whole different insight, and that's, I think, where it helped me, not only in my district, but also being chairman.
Thank you, and it's amazing to think that this committee serves over 16.5 million veterans nationwide. It's a huge responsibility. Jason, I want to touch on your experience in the VA. I know you served many years in that big behemoth. It's a massive, it's the second largest agency in the federal government, and we know how big the federal government is, so that's huge. We saw the VA Mission Act pass in 2018. We saw the ability to choose VA healthcare outside of the system was extremely popular. The VA at the time was advertising that. They had a website up about it. And then COVID-19 hit. A lot of that choice went away during that. We had a new administration, and during this new administration, we've seen them take down that VA website. And so veterans aren't being educated on what their choices are in the Mission Act. Could you maybe describe a little bit of what that's like? Maybe a little bit of what we found out from the AFPA, Freedom of Information Act, and just walk us through a little bit what it's like inside that huge bureaucracy.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, by the way, and thank you, Chairman, for the time. And I have to tell you, just to begin, what a pleasure it is to have you in the position you're in. And as Russ talked about, I served in the VA as the senior advisor for Secretary Wilkie. Yeah. And under that administration, we passed the Mission Act, which was really to provide our veterans, those of you in the audience will know this, the ability to go into the community when VA was unable to make the care or meet your appointment on time or provide a specialty care that you needed. And we were so excited about that. But I'm a special ops guy. I come from special operations. I'm a Green Beret. So we think fast and we think lean and creatively. And when you're inside one of these large bureaucracies, this government bureaucracy, you can't imagine how slow it is and how difficult it was to take a policy written by our legislators, well written, well crafted, and watch it trickle through the different levels of the bureaucracy, the agency. And not just trickle through like a full stream, but trickle through and lose effect on its way down to you to deliver care to the veteran. So what we watched in the first instance, Russ, was that one, it was hard to get that policy into the hands of the healthcare deliverers. And so it required constant oversight back and forth with the committees. Then, as we've seen, COVID came along, and in that time, we watched about 20 million appointments that got canceled by VA. And then it became, let's call it a reason to keep veterans from going out to the community. So again, that was there as a relief valve for veterans that couldn't get service when they needed it. And now we're seeing the consequences of that with mental health, substance abuse, where a veteran has difficulty accessing critical care the moment he needs it. So the whole point of this was you pass great legislation, and then it's on the agency to make sure that happens. But if someone's not watching them, the agency it's hard to do that work. There's too many people, there's too many layers of bureaucracy. And so we look at this from AFP, the Americans for Prosperity Foundation, and they sued with the Freedom of Information Act to find out what was wrong, what was missing. And it turns out there's a lot of manipulation of numbers, the way the VA calculates your wait time versus your actual wait time. And they're very creative in how they do this. And it takes a lot of lawsuit and paperwork to get behind the systems to understand by what means are they delaying your care. Now that we've got that in hand, we've been able to assimilate that information to empower the legislators to go back and do that first stage or second stage of accountability and transparency.
Awesome, thank you, Jason. Chairman Bost, one of the things that we've really admired about you is the goal of CBA when we were pushing choice in 14 and the Mission Act was the acknowledgement that the VA can and does provide excellent health care in many cases. Veterans want to be able to keep that choice. They want to be able to keep some of the excellent care that comes from that. But the frustration with wait times or travel distances, canceled appointments, et cetera, that the Mission Act that you were champion of had some great results. And now people had a choice between either one and could shop and get what they needed. Recently, you had written a letter to Secretary of State trying to figure out what some of the roadblocks were and why they were there. How do you walk that line of keeping what they do great intact and yet get to the bottom of where some of these roadblocks are?
Sometimes, let me tell you, sometimes it's, you're going to try to change the mindset of the bureaucrats that are doing it, which is always very difficult. Let me tell you, I want you to think about this. I've been in Congress 9 years. I've seen 5 secretaries. 5 secretaries? Yeah. And it looks like this one may not be around long. So, I mean, seriously, that's just the way it is. And so you're dealing with the lower level bureaucracy, but you have to go through the secretary. And what we have to do is well, first off, let me say this. The VA was created for the veteran. The VA was not created for the VA. Say that? And what we need to understand is that, yes, we passed the Mission Act. After the Choice Act had already failed, right? And now we have to give oversight and be aggressive. But here's the thing that also you realize. This is so common in VAs, and it's said at your level, and it's said at my committee level. If you've seen one VA, you've seen one VA. And for each of them and their visions, whether or not they are actually implementing exactly what we passed, the exact way it was supposed to be passed, now is up to us to go back and aggressively go after them, because the idea is that you are the veteran. You are owed certain services. You should not have to wait on those services for a long period of time. But let me clarify something else. We are not privatizing the VA. Let me say that again. We are not privatizing the VA, but we are making the VA work for you. Doesn't work. Look, I want employees treated well, don't get me wrong. But the VA is for you. It's not for the employees, it's not for the bureaucrats. And we've got to make sure those services are private. The oversight, and in answer to your question, is our job in our committee. One thing I've done is I also was able to recruit a whole lot of veterans to become committee chairs.
Nice.
And so the oversight is going to occur because some of them are like pit bulls and I have to hold them back every once in a while. But we'll do that, but we'll do the oversight, I guarantee it.
Awesome, thank you very much. One of the things that we were able to discuss outside is there's 3 things you're promised when you go in the military. Should you get injured or hurt in the line of duty or sick, we'll take care of your physical needs. Should you want to exercise your right to buy a home, we'll provide a VA home loan. And should you have the ability to want to be able to further your education and use your GI Bill. And I think the popularity of those other 2 things is the veteran is empowered. And I think the ability to empower him with choice, with a working VA system that works well for them or other options is the key. And so we're real excited about the work you're doing there. We're real excited about, Jason, some of the things that we're seeing with expanded choice, but also with the ability to help veterans in need from combat situations, from mental health stress, from burn pits. Can you describe a little bit of what it's like for a combat veteran, maybe multiple tours, maybe exposed, what that's like for folks that wore the shoes that you have? We're peacetime veterans.
Yeah.
We've seen our brothers and sisters and our relatives go through some of the things you've gone through. Can you give us that experience a little bit?
Yeah, thanks for that, Russ. I think that I've got to reflect a little bit because combat tours are tough. Number one, anytime you leave your family and step away from those you love, you're willing to go to a place where you're purposefully going to be shot at and potentially die. And so when you meet with that sort of violence, that random violence on the battlefield, number one, how many combat vets here? Raise your hand if you've been deployed. Okay, so you know this feeling, but there's a randomness in the violence on the battlefield that knows it's a no respecter of race, religion, color, creed, rank, or specialty. And it just takes people. And it takes people in ways that are not explainable, it's not understandable. And then you begin to have this burden every time you survive an event or think about death, when you cross that threshold of the next door, and think about your family and having to put that away and do your job and face the mission. And then the idea that you survive that and come home, and then you reintegrate, and it's hard. Anybody come home and walk into that, you've got to re-meet your family again, and there's fighting and there's distress, and then before you know it, post 9/11, you're back out the door again, going with another crew or another group to do the same thing. Again, not sure if you're coming back, and this wears on you. And I've seen peers that they become sort of burdened by this idea that they have to keep going back because we're trying to accomplish something. What it is, that's anybody's guess. But this idea that there's a need to go back and serve, and then finally you start bearing more friends and more friends. And some of us come back and don't know how to reintegrate. The Army doesn't teach that. The military doesn't teach that. The VA doesn't teach that. And so there's this problem we have with getting back to normal society where you drive down a road and the piece of trash in the middle of the berm is not an IED and probably never will be, but that's not how you think. And so we need help. And many of us, it takes a long time to learn how to reach out to our peers or to someone we trust and say, hey, I'm having problems here. And when we communicate that, you find people willing to wrap their arms around you and really dig in with you as a brother, as a sister, as another combat veteran, and look at you in the eyes and explain or tell you, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. But the system is supposed to be there to support that. So when you come in front of the bureaucracy and the layers of excuses or rationalizations, and all you're trying to do is get to that peer to put an arm around you and lift you up in a place where you're broken, and then you're on the phone or you're going back through appointments or scheduling, folks lose hope. And when you lose hope and you become despondent, you turn to the escape mechanisms: alcohol, drugs, opioid, suicide. And so when we fail to deliver care in the first instance right away, that's the risk. That's the opportunity we're missing, is serving a veteran, not just in training and preparing them for combat or going to do the mission, but redeploying them home and showing them or giving them an opportunity to reintegrate back into society, to become leaders again, but on the civic field. And so your work is phenomenally important. And again, I can't tell you how much of a pleasure it is to have you in that seat.
Well, Chairman Bost, if you'll let me, yeah, absolutely. I want to turn to a piece of legislation that you have. We restored the VA Accountability Act. We saw last March that the VA decided that they were going to stop using the standards of the 2017 VA Accountability and Whistle Production. Is that correct? Thank you. A little tongue-tied, not enough water. Protection Act. And so one of the very things that we pointed out during choice was there was, some VA employees that needed to be held accountable, and there wasn't a way to do that prior to 2017. Would you maybe talk through what your bill does, how it restores some of that accountability?
Yeah, first off, that accountability was put in place by the former administration and was being implemented by the former administration. This administration came in and basically pulled back, even though we believe it was in law, that it was giving them the grace and the opportunity to do that. Look, we have a lot of good employees at the VA. We do. We got bad ones. And some of those need to be relieved of their duty. And that can be at a lower level, and it can be at a mid-range level, and it can be at a higher level. And unfortunately, what happens is we have one particular VA member that I can, employee that I can bring up, 32 counts. 32 counts. But this administration has not fired him yet. Not fired him yet. 32. Folks, I'm going to say it again. The VA is there for the veteran. It's not there for the employee. And if you've got bad employees, get rid of bad employees and find the employees that are there with the servant's heart to serve your needs as veterans. And what this bill simply does is codifies in law what was being done prior to this administration. Now, will they fight me against it or fight me over it? Well, I hope they won't, but I got a feeling they will, and I hope we get it through the Senate, because if we're going to have the best VA we can have, we have to make sure that we can discipline and or remove bad employees. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, it's not hard to explain.
That's exciting, and that's outstanding. Thank you for that. So my last question is going to be for both of you. So we know there's some exciting full choice for healthcare coming up. One thing that does work in the VA is urgent care. When a veteran needs urgent care, he's already pre-enrolled, he can go, the bills are paid, you don't get stuck with emergency room bills like if you don't fill out your form correctly, or some of those nightmare scenarios we've heard. Jason, I'll start with you. Talk a little bit about how expanding choice could help, or what are some of the good ideas. Yeah. We'll finish with the chairman, some of his thoughts. And then I've got a final wrap-up question for you.
Right. Well, I think right here near St. Clair County Clinic, you've got a wait time of 72 days for a new patient. 72 days. And some of that, again, is kind of creative wait time math that the VA does. So what community care is presenting is an option. If you're going to get that kind of a wait time through the VA, then the option is there. It's in the law. You guys did a great job on that. And now we just have to get the VA to follow it. they're supposed to tell you and inform you what other benefits are available to you. What else can you use? So community care is that outlet. It's for you to be able to experience your benefits where they most meet you. In my case, I have to drive over an hour and 10 minutes to get to a VA hospital. If I want to pick up medicines, my case, I should be able to go to a clinic nearby. But there's plenty of veterans who aren't served in their local communities. And so this act, this is meant to provide that choice. You talked about the GI Bill earlier. Yeah. When you get your money for a home loan or a GI Bill, they don't tell you where to go or where you should buy your house from. You go shop the market. What we're saying with community care and some of the full choice acts is that the veteran, again, to put them in the front of the decision process, they ought to be able to shop the market as well. That's the most powerful, I think, effective way to help VA stay within that spirit of the law.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add to that is, look, we feel like in rural Southern Illinois, whether you're going to St. Louis or whether you're going to Marion, and you may have to drive 60 miles, you may have to drive, 45 miles. Folks, when I represent the nation as a chair, folks, can you imagine being out in North Dakota? You find a place that can actually take care of you where you're at and receive your benefits. You shouldn't be penalized because there's not a VA within driving distance. Like I said, we don't want to privatize VA. We want to provide the services for those veterans that were guaranteed to them regardless of where they're at. Now, it's a whole different story when we deal with foreign countries and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into that. But when we're talking here in this nation and you have a healthcare system right down the street that will satisfy your needs, that's where you need to be able to go. And that's where we need to make sure that the VA is implemented exactly what we've done.
All right, our last question for the chairman today, and then we'll open up to some questions that there were some question cards that went around. I think Mike has gathered some of those. Chairman, as a congressman, we know that every congressman and congresswoman faces this. There's members of their constituents that have needs. Usually there's a veterans constituent service. What's available here in your district? Who helps serve that? Could you share a little bit about that?
Yep. Just so you know, and for most of you in this room, I would say that you're right here near Muscuda. My Muscuda office, I happened to write this down a while ago because I don't have it memorized because we just replaced it there. Hold on just a second. I got the number. You need to call Katie or one of my staff at 618-622-0774. So those services are available, and for years we had a veteran service person that was really with us, and he left us. He's still sitting in the middle of the room. We won't call him out on that, but he got an offer he couldn't refuse, and so we're doing it right now. And we're actually going to be. We try to reach out to find a veteran to fulfill that, but our staff is doing that now, and that's in every one of our congressional members try to do that. But also the vitally important thing to also remember for reaching out. That's for any problem you might have. We're going to help you. Let me tell you, the VSOs do a great job, but we can help with that too. Yeah, the VSOs are great. And we want to say a special thank you to them because they are the front line. We can help. But what I also want to say is that understand when we have 17, we're down to 17, but I don't think those numbers are accurate, suicides a day of our veterans, and only 6 of them, or as many as 6 of them have never even reached out to the VA, which is terrible. We got to do a better job with TAP program. But that being said, I want to give this number. Remember, we have made it easier to reach the suicide hotline, 988, just 988, just like 911, but 988. And if you see someone in distress, or you yourself are in distress, those services are available. Please, please, please don't make a permanent decision for a temporary problem.
Great advice. I think I see Katie right back there.
Katie's right there.
Raise your hand, Katie. And thank you so much for that. Also, saw a VSO member raise their hand. If you're a part of the VSO, and would you raise your hand if you want folks to visit with you a little bit about the great work they do? Don't be shy to say, here we are, this is what we do. I want to thank Seth so much for your post here and hosting us. Thank you for the VFWs that have come and shared the day with us. So I have stonewalled long enough, and I've allowed Mike plenty of time to gather up some questions. Mike, you want to read us maybe the top 2 or 3 questions? You want to use your Marine voice and bellow it out, or? All right.
Sure thing, Russ.
All right, there you go.
First, I'm Mike Pound, Marine veteran, sergeant.
All right, off our Ohio team, Mike Pounds.
We got Mike Pickero, we have Dave Robinson, and Joshua Platt from Ohio here at CBA. The first question is from John. He would like to know, what is the current status for veterans who use the VA hospital and the military who were separated for refusal to get passed?
We are in the process right now of making sure that they're all reinstated to receive their benefits. Let me tell you, that's another thing that's personal to me. I had a granddaughter that was in boot camp. She refused. It was a long time getting her, because you know how it is when you refuse something in boot camp? Yeah. It was the first time ever. You know, we all serve and we got shots, but they were shots. And she was a nurse, by the way. That's why she did that. And we have a whole lot of people that were discharged. We're still trying to deal with that too. That were discharged and maybe were just almost their full retirement. We're going to be dealing with this, but your VA benefits will be reinstated completely.
Thank you. Great. All right, let's do one more veteran-specific healthcare question, Mike, if you've got that handy. We're going to give the chairman some time to mingle and meet some people.
Yes, so Vernon would like to know why he could not appeal when his blood pressure issue was denied.
I don't know why he couldn't appeal, except if it was done earlier, because it should be able to be appealed now. That is a presumption. It was a presumption that was presented by the secretary, but now it was put into law as well. So it should, if that's one of those cases where reach out to our office. If it's been denied still, let's get it done.
Take a couple more questions.
Okay.
Do you have one more?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So, 2 questions. Where do VA hospitals get their doctors? And why can't they let us use any doctor benefits?
Do you mind if I go to you first and then to Jason on how they get their working inside the VA? Go ahead.
When we do the hiring in the VA, because we cross that, it is very difficult to find our docs, okay? And it depends on where you're at. Right now, there's a shortage of healthcare workers completely. I wish, and let me tell you that you have good ones and you have bad ones just like any place else, all right? But we get our VA doctors like anybody else. They interview for the positions, we show a listing and we bring them in. We are also then, depending on the VA, based on what their mission is at the VA, for instance, if your VA is located in a place where they're only doing 2, 3, 4, 5 a year of a certain type of surgery, probably that needs to go to the outside, because I want a surgeon that does it like 150 times a day. So not wore out, but have a tremendous amount of experience. And that is available, okay, that they can do that. And that's part of what we were talking about in the choice or the Mission Act availability. So.
Yeah, the challenge to availability is it's in the law if you have an exorbitant wait time or distance to drive, or if between you and the clinician that you have, it's in your best interest. That was a catch-all category put into law just in the event that you might not meet the other standards, but your clinician says this is in your best interest. You ought to be able to access outside community care. The challenge, however, is that a lot of folks at the administrative level inside the department are not aware of the law. And much of the training, and this was discovered through the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against VA, much of the training steers the administrators into discussions that would lead the veteran back keep them inside the VA system. So they had an obligation in the law to proactively tell you what options you had. If you get on the phone, they're supposed to let you know, you can do this, you can do this, or you can do this. But instead, the VA is playing a little bit of obfuscation games. They're hiding that information. So we're looking to legislation now to go back and correct that so that there never has to be a question anymore.
All right, in the interest of time, we will take the remaining questions that have been written down. Katie, where are you at? We're going to hand them there. And then we're going to give Chairman Bost the opportunity to walk around the room and visit with some folks and do that. I would like to ask you to write down one website, maybe two, the Mission Act website that Jason talked about. If you will go to VAMissionAct.com, all one word, VAMissionAct.com. It is the website that they used to use to tell you about services that were out there. That's the website they took down. We're able to republish that and put it back out there. It's not a VA website. It's CVA's foundation that pays for that. It's a great tool to understand what's out there. So Katie, if you'll raise your hand one more time. All right, questions are going to go that way. We're going to end. Chairman Bost, do you have any final comments before we turn you loose on the room or them on you?
Just say thank you for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you. And like you said, if we got questions, just direct them through Katie and we'll get them back to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time. Thank you all for coming. We've got some food for you as well.